Welcome to the first in a series that we are calling Silent Stages. It is um, to, to kind of bring attention to the state of the music industry and how it's been affected by COVID. That includes musicians behind the scenes, venue owners, anybody, any sector of the music industry. We want to get stories from people and have conversations and see how they've adapted, how it's affected them, how they see their future in the music industry, if they do. And today we're fortunate to have Jordan Grobe from the National Independent Venue Association, who I thought would be an excellent guest to kind of give us the best information on what's happening right now, since they're the agency or organization that's been fighting to preserve what we feel is a vital part of the music industry and the ecosystem that helps to produce a lot of the stars and the people that you see on stage. So we can start with Jordan, if you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved and about the organization.
Sure. Well, I've been in music for probably a little over a decade now. Half of that time has been spent here in Washington, D.C. Before the COVID lockdowns, I worked for IMP. We have the 930 Club, the Lincoln Theater, Merriweather Post Pavilion, and the Anthem. I was the communications coordinator, and Audrey Fix-Schaefer was the communications director. When everything closed, there were pretty immediate conversations between Reverend Moose from Marauder, which is a music PR company in New York and in London, who had organized what was called Independent Venue Week. Those were essentially a week a year for the past couple of years to just celebrate being an independent venue across the United States and the United Kingdom. And so some of those connections already existed, thankfully. But once everything closed, we had this moment where everyone was looking around and didn't really know what was going to happen. We still don't. But we knew that the only way that we would get through it as independent business owners was if we grouped together and understood and tackled this problem collectively. So you had all these people that either, sort of vaguely knew each other or had been outright competing with one another beforehand. And now we were all joining forces and linking arms in order to sound the alarm that, if we didn't get any support here, there wouldn't be another side for us. We wouldn't be here whenever the lockdowns were lifted. And so Audrey Fix-Schaefer is the communications director for N.I.V.A, and I went along with her. So we've been fighting from day one to save and preserve these independent venues across the country. N.I.V.A itself is now up to 3,000 members. So that's all across the country, different venues of different sizes and promoters. And it's also not just music, it's also comedy clubs and things like that. Because live entertainment in general is what's really in danger here.
Yeah. So you feel like it was a pretty immediate awareness of how dire the situation was?
There was an immediate understanding among us that this was going to be really bad.
Yeah.
And we also knew that there was a complete lack of understanding on the other side of just how complicated and difficult this period was going to be for people like us. When you're talking about restaurants, they can operate on a takeout level. Obviously it's not the same and everyone is hurting, but the income level at that point still exists. We can't do a takeout concert. Doesn't work. So we were completely shut down. And the line that we like to say is first to close, last to reopen. Because the other thing that people don't realize is just how many cogs this machine has, which means the day everyone is vaccinated to a safe level isn't the day that we can immediately just jump right back into the loop. It takes a lot of time to bring everybody back on board, to schedule tours all across the country, and make sure that all of this is operating again and that shows have been promoted accordingly. We can sell tickets and get people indoors safely. If New York City is safe and secure, but Los Angeles isn't, bands have no way of getting across the country on a tour. So it's not, maybe you'll have some one-off shows in some cities, but for the most part, it doesn't pay for a band to go on tour until they can really go on tour and be everywhere that they used to be. And part of that was also making sure that those tour routes entirely were protected. If you have venues that are left over in the major cities, but in the middle, there's nothing left because they've all had to close as a result of COVID, then that completely disrupts the business just as much as everything else.
So at this point, do you have an estimation or do you have a number about what percentage of these venues have already shuttered, or is it?
So we've seen probably in the hundreds close, unfortunately.
Mhm.
It's this emotional and logical calculus that all of these venue owners had to play from April onward. That, okay, I can continue to place myself in further debt in the hope that this federal aid comes. But if it doesn't come, then I've only placed myself into this debt that I can't get out of. And so that was the decision that people had to make every single day from the time that we closed from until, you know, December 26th when they passed the new COVID relief bill that thankfully had our Save Our Stages Act legislation included. We had venues that closed in December, just weeks before that bill passed, because they just couldn't hang on any longer. Um, One of the things that we pulled together to try to prevent that from happening was the Emergency Relief Fund, where we took all the donations that we'd received from some business partners and from fans all over the country, um, and we're doling those out to venues on an as-needed emergency basis. These weren't payments that were going to keep them alive through the end of COVID, but we're going to keep them alive those extra few weeks just to make sure that, this federal money can start rolling soon. And when we opened up those applications, we received $11 million worth in need, and we only had $3 million to give. So even today, we're still collecting donations just to make sure people can hang on long enough, because the bill, although it has passed, has not started to be paid out yet.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. It's like, when do you think that those funds are going to be allocated or available or distributed? And
I know they're working very hard on getting that out as quickly as they can.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's the Small Business Administration. They have a lot that they're dealing with in general, and we all want to make sure that this is effectively distributed in a way that's fair to everyone and, managed and overseen properly.
Can you sort of tell us about some of the people who are affected by this? Because we think of the club owners, but this affects a wide variety of people.
When you think about going to a show, you're probably leaving your house at like 7 p.m. Maybe you're getting dinner beforehand, and then you're rolling up for the opener at 8, and then the headliner at 9 or 9:30, and then you're out the door going home at 11, 11:30. But you've had anywhere from 15 to 50 to 100 people that have been working behind the scenes since 8 a.m. that morning when they rolled up in front of the venue to unload, to set the stage, prepare the lights, do a sound check, execute everything, get it all ready to go, and then put on the show that you were lucky enough to observe. And then they have to take it all down, pack it all back into the truck, and then drive to the next city. And so they're pulling days that, could go from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. and then they get 4 hours of sleep. And thankfully, those people generally love what they do, because you have to when you're working that crazy of a schedule. But those are the sorts of thankless hours and jobs that people are doing that, if they did their job properly, you don't know they're there. You might know they're there if something goes wrong, like if the light goes out or something like that.
Yeah.
But if everything has gone flawlessly, then you've had a fantastic evening, everyone's done their job, and you're good to go. When you think about all of the people that are actually interacting with you when you walk through those doors. They're taking your tickets, they're making sure that you're getting in safely, they're checking your IDs, they're serving you drinks. All of those hospitality jobs are also now completely vanished. Um, every single level of this has been brutal on the employees for the venues, but then also for the musicians. What a lot of people don't realize nowadays with the music industry is just how absolutely fundamental touring is for a musician to survive off of their music. Album sales aren't doing it anymore. Streaming's not doing it. 75% of most artists' revenue for an entire year comes from being on the road and playing shows. And that's gone. And that's been really brutal and difficult for a lot of musicians as well.
That's one of my big concerns is, like I mentioned earlier, is that ecosystem, which is
Right.
musicians, the artists, and hopefully they've got some sort of alternative form of income. I was in the music business here in Austin for a few years, and I know a lot of artists, I know a lot of venue owners, I know a lot of people in the business, and um, it's it's scary to think of what they're going to do if they don't have a venue um, to go and do what they do. At some point, do they give up? Because it's already tough enough as is being
Exactly.
and throwing this
Right.
into the mix is a whole nother curve.
Right. I mean, you don't just become Lady Gaga or Bruce Springsteen overnight. It doesn't happen. You
Yeah.
have to hone your craft in front of a small audience. You have to continue to write your songs in front of a small audience. You're playing every single night just to figure out what you're doing and who you want to be and who you are, and make sure that people can hear you and like you and grow your crowds. And thankfully, that's something that all of those musicians at all of those levels do understand, to the extent that, when we were in the rock and a hard place that we were in, when we called upon those musicians to help us, they absolutely saw and understood the dire situation that we were in. And so we were able to get, 2,000 signatures on a letter to Congress, 600 of which were physical signatures from musicians like Willie Nelson. And showing just how desperate this situation was and how real it was for our Congress people was really what managed to push it over the line in terms of getting our relief package included. Um, the Save Our Stages Act was introduced in June, and it didn't pass until December. It's a long waiting game,
Yeah.
but it happened, and it only happened because of the support of fans and of musicians. We had 2.5 million letters get sent to every single congressperson from fans all across the country, just constantly rattling cages to show them, like, this is an important problem. And it's not just important from the perspective of art and culture, which it obviously is, but it's also an economic problem. Because when you think about these communities and what those events provide them, there was a study that was conducted in Chicago that found for every dollar in ticket sales, $12 is generated for local businesses. Because people are going to dinner, they're going to bars, they're flying in, they're getting a hotel. All of these auxiliary businesses that pop up around a venue. And when that venue closes and the crowds stop coming, that is a huge pain for everyone in that area, not just for the music itself.
Here in Austin, the similar thing is going on the local level, and I've been following it. And it's funny because we have ACL Fest, we've got South by Southwest. They generate millions of dollars for the city, and I think a lot of us feel like the city's been dragging their feet and not really living up to supporting the live music capital of the world, as they like to claim it. And I'm at a point where I'm think that maybe they should rethink that slogan. We're the next
Right.
Silicon Valley at this point. But anyways,
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky enough that when we actually got through to people and they heard our message, they understood it from a full 360 perspective. And that allowed us to have support that was completely bipartisan in a time when, that was unheard of. And it was that support from all sides that ultimately brought us over the finish line to get this bill passed.
Do you have any personal stories, things that you've heard about people that can help us who are not involved in the industry and have a really strong understanding of it, better sort of see what's really going on? Anything that you've heard from people, touring people or club owners, that you could share with us?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's been so difficult about this time, as I keep saying, we spend so many hours working on these shows, but we also spend all that time working together on those shows. There's an inherent community there that you see the same people every day, and you have this camaraderie that you're putting on these incredible events. That every night you're getting a different crowd of X hundred or thousand of people in that crowd that are having, that's their moment for maybe the week, maybe the month, maybe they had to get a babysitter. Like that's the pinnacle for them for a really long time. And we get to do that every single day. And now we don't get to do that every single day. Before COVID hit, I either attended or worked somewhere in the realm of like 180 shows in 2019, 200 shows in 2018. And then suddenly the brakes get slammed and we have nothing to do. Um, it's a very different environment. And for a lot of people, it's all they know, which makes it even more difficult for them. You're talking about musicians being able to support themselves and the other people in our business being able to support themselves. Um, Hopefully they can pivot and they can find other jobs to at least, put bread on the table. But at the end of the day, if you're an experienced sound engineer who's been doing it for 30 years, there's no need for a sound engineer right now. There's nothing to produce. And that's an extremely skilled position. Like that's years and years of experience that you no longer can apply to essentially anything. Um, Obviously, working in a live music environment, being able to think on your feet, you've got tons of experience that you can apply elsewhere. But do you want to?
Yeah.
That's the ultimate question too, is all these people are going to be forced to find other work. And that's going to make coming back even more difficult and even more of a slow process. It's going to be, okay, now we have the green light, it's safe again. We have to bring our staff back. We have to hope that they can all come back, hope that they've chosen to come back, and that maybe they haven't even moved away. A lot of these people that were working at venues in cities have extremely high living expenses. And when your only source of income is completely dried up, you've got to move somewhere else. So I think the whole field is going to look very different on the other side.
You talk about these are the fans' big moment for the week. Like this is, and a lot of people have been looking forward to this. They bought their ticket a month ago, and this
Right.
is their big night out, and this is their favorite artist. So it just suggests to me that even beyond the the hardships that the people in the industry are going through, there's a big societal impact
Absolutely.
to
Yeah.
this.
I mean, these events are moments of collective healing. It is where people go to blow off some steam, to connect with people that they don't know, that they may have nothing else in common with. But when you've got 1,000 people singing the same song, nothing else matters. They are in that moment, they are enjoying the same thing, and we are all humans, we're all people. And that kind of connectivity, when it's lost and now we only have, Zoom screens, is a very different experience. And it doesn't transfer and it does feel disconnected. Um, which is also why I'm not really concerned about people wanting to go back when we can. I know that people are just going to be flooding into those venues to feel the thump of bass in their chest again and to be able to dance and scream with all their friends. Um, but missing it now does make it all a lot more difficult. And that's something that we all, as people who work in the industry, recognize every night that we're doing that, is that you are all there to have an amazing time. And having an amazing time and remembering that show fondly is not simply the sole responsibility of the band. The band could have a fantastic set that night, but if you had a bad experience walking in the door, then the whole thing is colored. And that changes the whole dynamic. So from the moment that you get in line, we want to make sure that you feel welcome, that you feel safe, and that you want to be there and are having a great time. And I think that some aspect of that is heightened and really taken care of when you're at an independent venue. When you're at a small business that really cares about the fan and their experience and is working so hard from the get-go to make sure that you're having an incredible event.
Yeah, I noticed on your site you've got a couple of local Austin guys. I know Cody Cowan from the Red River Cultural District's on there, and Graham Williams, who unfortunately had to shut down Margin Walker recently, which those guys are responsible for some of my favorite festival in Austin, which was Fun Fest. I don't know if you ever had a chance to go, but it was fun. So
that's the thing that we're all trying to figure out now is, now that we all know each other, we all want to see each other's venues.
yeah.
We want to go on this whole national tour to be with each other, because all that we know, having worked for N.I.V.A, is each other through a screen. And so we all need to have a collective celebration that, we got this bill passed. Hopefully that now there's another side, there's a brighter side, there's an end to the tunnel.
So what can people do? How can people who are concerned about this help N.I.V.A? How can people be active and participate, and support the cause?
If they have the available resources, then supporting their local venues by buying merch, buy a concert ticket if they're selling concerts that, will happen eventually. We don't know exactly when we'll be allowed back, but, some people still have shows on their calendars, and if they don't, you can buy a gift card that you'll exchange for a show whenever we do come back. You can donate to the Emergency Relief Fund, which will help preserve those really small venues that need just a little bit more help until this federal aid comes through. And then support all of your local musicians too, like your favorite bands that are struggling just as much as anybody else is. Bandcamp has been doing this fantastic program where the first Friday of every month, they're giving all proceeds from sales to the artists. They're not taking any cut from those sales. That's a great way of supporting the people that you really care about and love. And at the same time, it's a great way to find new music too. If you feel like you've been stuck in quarantine, just listening to the same old stuff over and over again, there are plenty of ways to go out and find new music.
Do you have any thoughts on, so there are some venues doing, some sort of live music, whether it be like selling tables. There's been some stuff here in town where people have done stuff in fields. Of course, I think that the larger venues and the major owned venues will have the money to put on these shows, and people will pay the jacked up ticket prices that they're charging for these to make up for the fact that they can only do a certain capacity. Do you have an opinion on these types of shows that are popping up? And so how do you feel that everything, is it going to stage out that way? I mean, I guess it's hard to predict. I mean, I'm sure you probably ran through it in your head.
It gets back to the root problem where bands still aren't going to be on the road because they can't go everywhere. They can't get there. If you're not local to an area, then you're not playing the show. And in a lot of cases, bands don't always live in the same place either. The drummer could be in Los Angeles and the guitarist is in Houston. So when you're in positions like that, it makes having an actual performance even more difficult. People have been trying anything they can to make a little bit of revenue, but at the end of the day, it's sort of like, how much are you willing to spend in order to try to break even?
Mm-hmm.
When you're looking at people that are doing streaming shows and drive-in shows and things of that nature, the barrier to entry is so high because you have to invest in all of this equipment that you don't have. And you're just hoping that that's going to break even and that you'll be in the black. And like the break even point is honestly the minimum goal here, because that way you can at least put some of your people back to work, right? But if you're in the red, then it's just making it even worse than if you were sitting closed with no income. It's like no income is better than negative income, even though you still have the same set costs.
So, okay. Now, there's a lot of doom and gloom.
Yeah.
It is very scary. It's, I mean,
Yeah.
it's awful. And it's just, it reflects the greater problem across the entire country. Is, is there anything that gives you hope, that sort of can give
Mhm.
us all some hope and an ability to look forward to an end to this?
Yes. Um, I mean, we got the bill passed. That was absolutely huge. That was a mammoth undertaking that no one thought that we could accomplish. And we made it happen from the support of all of our fans and musicians and everybody that makes this industry as great as it can be. Um, that means that when COVID is over, all of these venues will still be there, that these shows can happen again. Um, there is the potential now that we have all kind of opened the lines of communication to form N.I.V.A, that we can band together to accomplish some really great things. You know, we're tackling the ideas of diversity and inclusion and equity and what that looks like and means in our industry. And, you know, we're figuring out ways that we can make experiences for fans even better than they may have been in the past. Um, as for when that can happen, you know, Fauci had some good news a few weeks ago when he said that hopefully by the fall we'll be vaccinated enough to have concerts again. And we're holding him to that, but we're all crossing our fingers at this point, just hoping that that's the case. You know, we want to be back at it as badly as everybody else does, and that's what we're clinging to at the moment.
Yeah, I'm hoping that, and I see that this situation is going to force people to be a lot more creative and inventive with what they're doing, and I think the end result is going to be something that's going to be completely different, maybe, than what we've experienced in the past, and be even better. It's just,
Right.
getting to that point is the hard part.
Right. Well, and the hope is that, you know, for musicians that have had the time to not be completely stressed with trying to put bread on the table, is that they'll have had some time to write. And hopefully we can have some really great albums that come out of this time.
Oh, I believe so.
I know I'm going to go to a shit ton of shows as soon as it opens up.
Yeah.
I'm saving it up, man. I'm going to be out there. I'm going to, I personally have taken this time to discover a lot of new music, and that's been great. And I'm going to go see every single one of those guys when they come back. And when you guys with your organization do the thing that you're talking about, where you all get together and go on the road, call me and Michael. Okay, we'll come with you.
Boston, LA.
We'll be there.
Cool. All right, Jordan. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And thanks again for all your hard work and everybody else that's doing it. We'll get this out to everybody and spread the word, hopefully draw some more attention to it, because I think people get into a rut and they kind of feel complacent and stop paying attention to the things. And this is, like you said, this is going to be the first to close and last to open. So it needs attention all the way through to the very end. So thanks again.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Jordan. All right. Take care.